Chambers. Noting that today, like all other city committees, we're exclusively taking public comment in person. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Here.
Councilmember McOsker. Councilmember Rahman. Here. Councilmember Blumenfield. Councilmember Hernandez. 3 members in the quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Villanueva. We've established a quorum. Colleagues, today we have 9 items on the agenda. We're going to continue items 3, 4, 5, and 9. For consent, I'd put forward items 1 and 2. On item 1, I'll note that the appointee, Ms. Nichols, is listening in on the meeting remotely, and I'd like to acknowledge her and thank Sarah for her willingness to share her expertise in this public service capacity. She's an awesome human being. Colleagues, any objection to items 1 and 2 on consent? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, would you please confirm the consent calendar?
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
We're now ready to receive comments by the public. Ms. Choi, please read instructions on how to give public comment.
Madam Chair, would you like me to call the vote for items 1
Oh,
and 2?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember McOsker.
Thanks.
Councilmember Rahman. Yes. Councilmember Blumenfield. Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
3 ayes, and items 1 and 2 are approved on consent.
Okay, great. So we're now ready to receive public comment. Ms. Choi, please read instructions on how to give public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public will have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total, and 1 minute for general public comment. Please speak on the items before beginning general comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you're not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you're speaking on a specific agenda item, you will get 1 brief warning from me or the chair. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again stray off topic, the chair will cut you off and you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we'll move on to the next speaker. Public comments will be limited to 40 minutes total. Thank you.
First up is Donald Harlan. And I'll just call the next 3 people so you know you're going to be next. David Hockey, Monica Embry, and Poloy Estabrook.
Hi, I'm Donald Harlan. I'd like to speak on agenda items number 6, 4, 8, 9, and a general comment.
You have 3 minutes total. Please begin.
I was a little concerned that some of these subcommittees, like the Energy and Environment Committee, that you guys were attempting to validate your illegal real estate developments by claiming resources or trying to establish new resources. For example, electric vehicle charging, or attaching to the electrical infrastructure through DWP, that you developed a apartment building illegally and you haven't contributed anything to the electrical grid or infrastructure. You don't even have your own electricity. You guys build that stuff and just think you're going to plug in. And furthermore, there's a lot of wear to the infrastructure because of the electric vehicles that they have now in the energy storage grids that you guys are planning. A lot of the energy storage grid programs are schemes by politicians' kids to make money on a science theory that doesn't even work. They don't even have the resources to back their energies things they're trying to create. There's a big problem, also lots of conflicts of interest by city council members and people on the Energy and Environment Committee because they have traded in energy stocks and there's a conflict there. A lot of these agenda items are based upon environmental or green agenda or CEQA or something, you know. CEQA doesn't own any of that stuff. The city council doesn't own that stuff. It's not for you guys to be making deals in there at all. You're supposed to be monitoring. I get a general comment.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to you guys that there's a concentrated attack on the energy infrastructure here in the United States. Several people, large entities, you know, or Koch Enterprises, all kinds of military complexes from foreign nations attempting to crash the energy grid here. They're after the oil and the gas. I have a tax on my oil. People trying to illegally drill for my oil, causing climate catastrophes, environmental disasters. There's a lot of schemes by the city council where they create battery plants in brown zones and make a bunch of waste lots with their illegal activities, and then they use the government to pay for it to clean it up. It's really ridiculous
Your
what they
time's
have
up.
going on here. It needs to
Thank
be
you,
stopped.
Speaker. Madam Chair, can we re-vote on items 1 and 2 because he has spoken on these items, and we need to make the vote after considering public comments? So it's given.
Sure, can we vote on them combined, or do we need to vote on them separately?
Combined is fine, right?
I'm sorry.
Combined is okay.
Yeah,
right?
combined.
On consent.
Okay, great. Can you call the roll for items 1 and 2?
Okay, we're calling the roll on items 1 and 2 again. Councilmember Yaroslavsky?
Yes.
Councilmember McOsker? Councilmember Rahman? Yes. Councilmember Blumenfield? Councilmember Hernandez?
Yes.
3 ayes, and both items 1 and 2 are approved.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to Mr. Hockey. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is David Hockey. I'm a Sierra Club volunteer. I'm also a resident of Mar Vista here in Los Angeles. May I have an extra minute for general public comment?
Which items are you speaking on?
6 and 7.
Okay, you have 3 minutes total. Please start with the agenda items.
Thank you. On item 7, I'm here to ask the LADWP to do a much better job at public engagement. The LADWP needs to really make a concerted effort to listen to what the public wants, not just paid consultants. It's very important that the public has an opportunity to weigh in on their plans for Scattergood. I want to commend the council members of this committee for your leadership in requiring LADWP to continue to explore alternatives to hydrogen combustion at Scattergood and to consult with those communities that would be affected on the use of hydrogen in the LA basin because of its known toxic effects on air quality. On item 6, I'm here to encourage this pilot project for storage to grid and vehicle to grid activities that would help the LADWP achieve its LA 100 clean energy goals and get to 100% clean energy by 2035. Electric buses with large batteries can help feed electricity back into the grid during times of grid stress, and there's some best candidates for this pilot given their capacity. We also encourage the LADWP to develop similar vehicle-to-grid programs, not just for big commercial customers, but also for residential customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next up is Monica Embry.
Good morning. I'd love to speak on items 6, 7, and general public comment, please.
You have 3 minutes total. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chair and committee members. It's great to be back in person with you today. My name is Monica Embry. I'm the California Energy Director for the Sierra Club and a resident of CD13. On item number 6, Sierra Club, as you just heard from David, is in full support of this pilot program to help ensure energy storage to grid that would allow LAUSD and Metro school buses to provide clean energy backups to power our lights and buildings and everything else we need. This is really an important step forward because electric buses and large batteries can help feed electricity back into the grid during times of grid stress and are some of the best candidates for this pilot given their capacity. Many of us remember how hot that heat wave was last fall and the incredible strain we put on our grid. The opportunity for large EVs, including buses and trucks, as well as residential programs to provide electricity back to our grid will ensure we rely on clean energy and help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So we fully support this item and request your yes vote. On item number 7, I want to really commend this committee specifically and the council members on this committee for your incredible leadership to require LADWP to continue to explore alternatives to hydrogen combustion at Scattergood and to update its strategic long-term research plan to look at alternatives to burning hydrogen at all 4 of our in-basin power plants. We do need LADWP to do much more robust outreach into communities directly neighboring these gas power plants about the potential risks associated with burning, storing hydrogen on site. Hydrogen, simply put, can be a bomb, and the amount of hydrogen we will need to store at these power plants put our communities at risk.
You have 1 minute left for general
you.
public.
Thank you. Communities for a Better Environment and the Sierra Club authored formal comments on the SLTRP, and we have sent them to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, as well as this committee. We are really grateful for the opportunity to raise these concerns in relationship to our climate, our air, our health, safety, and impact to ratepayers. It is not certain that burning hydrogen, an incredibly flammable fuel, at our power plants next to communities is the best way we can keep our energy sources moving. We must look at non-combustion alternatives and encourage you to continue to work with LADWP to do so. And we really thank especially Chair and Vice Chair and committee members for your leadership to continue to improve on this motion. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Monica. Polloy Estabrook, and then after Polloy will be Rosalind Tovar, Adam Lane, and Alex Jassett.
I'd like to speak on items 3, 4, and 5. So could I have 3 minutes?
You can have 2 minutes on the items and 1 minute for general comment, so 3 total, yes.
Thank you. My name is Polly Estabrook, and I live in the Hancock Park area of CD13. As we all know, shifting away from fossil fuel lifestyles is as rapidly as possible is imperative, and we have very little time to do this. The 3 motions I would like to speak on are 3, 4, and 5, and I totally support them and encourage you to vote yes on all 3 of those motions. Those motions will help LA residents seize the huge funding opportunities made available by the once-in-a-lifetime, as you know, Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So these opportunities, however, are very complex and very hard to understand, shifting, and of course the final requirements are not yet fully known. And therefore, the concierge-type service that you're proposing, that LADWP is proposing in item number 4, is absolutely required to help people navigate these very complex systems of IRS rebates and state refunds. So thank you very, very much to LADWP and to the City Council for helping LA residents and the communities take advantage of these historic opportunities. There's one other thing, though. I encourage the City Council to publicize these programs and all the funding opportunities that are available to them. And I wish that each city council member would do that in their area so that we could all understand what these opportunities are, and also for LAUSD that apparently has many opportunities specifically targeting them as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rosalind Tovar.
Hi, my name is Roslyn. I'm from Communities for a Better Environment and a resident of LA City District 10, and I'd like to speak on items 3, 6, and 7.
You have 2 minutes total.
So, as an outreach coordinator in Wilmington, I constantly talk to community members dealing with the impacts of air pollution. The agenda today covers some of the solutions, but there's still work we need to do to prioritize environmental justice communities. For item 3, it's important that DWP center equity and prioritize EV charging rebates for multifamily units. More than half of Angelenos live in multifamily units and are disproportionately low income. Those residents have to compete with commercial property owners for those rebates. We strongly support creating a separate multifamily rebate pool and increasing the annual cap. For item 6, we support approving the pilot, the commercial energy storage to grid pilot. It's very important to help DWP achieve its clean energy goals, and we urge DWP to develop a similar vehicle to grid program, not just for big commercial customers, but also residential customers. And it's really important to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, which is currently impacting us during our peak electricity usage. Now for item 7, lastly, I want to commend the council members on its committee for your leadership in requiring DWP to continue to explore alternatives to hydrogen and combustion at Scattergood. DWP should update its SLTRP to look at alternatives to burning hydrogen at all its 4 power plants, and to do more outreach in communities living directly next to these plants. We urge council to direct DWP to adopt our recommendations in our comments for many clean energy alternatives they should be looking at instead of hydrogen. CBE and Sierra Club authored formal comments. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Adam Lane.
Good afternoon. I'm hoping to speak in favor of items 3 and 6 and general comment related to item 7.
You have 3 minutes total. Please begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Yaroslavsky and honorable members of the committee. My name is Adam Lane. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Los Angeles Business Council. Related to item number 3, the LABC believes it's crucial that DWP update its annual funding authorization for its EV charging rebate programs to better align with the recently adopted EV master plan. Multifamily properties represent the biggest opportunity area, as more than half of Angelenos live in multifamily units, particularly low-income Angelenos. Currently, funding for multifamily falls into the commercial property category, which has been continually oversubscribed. We strongly support creating a standalone multifamily rebate pool and increasing the annual cap to prevent pauses in the program, which would provide certainty in the market while driving up local investment and job creation. Of particular importance is prioritizing rebates for multifamily properties located in disadvantaged communities or projects that have 20% affordability. As a city with majority renters, penetrating the multifamily market will increase access to EVs for low-income renters and to ensure the transition brings together all Angelenos, particularly those that have borne the brunt of climate change. On item number 6, the LABC strongly supports the proposed commercial energy storage to grid pilot program, which will help LA address our urgent reliability needs. The program will enable LA to address multiple challenges at once by harnessing the untapped battery storage capacity of mobile and stationary sources. Both mobile and stationary battery storage can store an abundance of renewable energy and provide peak power when the grid needs it most. Widespread adoption of these untapped resources will help reduce reliance on polluting power plants, enabling us to reach our LA 100 goals sooner, all while making the grid more resilient. LABC has many renewable energy developers and property owners in our membership who currently participate in one of the many LADWP local solar programs and have waited for standalone battery incentive programs to help grow the industry locally while creating new jobs and helping the city meet our energy goals. For those reasons, we respectfully request your support on items 3 and 6. General comment, I want to thank the LADWP staff for their years of hard work and dedication to produce the LA 100 study and on the SLTRP, which outlines a pathway for the city to reach 100% renewable energy. To create a balanced and resilient grid, the study identified that we need roughly 2 gigawatts of local solar by 2035. At the rate we've traditionally produced local solar and DER, we will likely not achieve those goals. So we would like to see LADWP provide a clear plan about how to scale up local resources to achieve this. These programs have created thousands of local, private, and union jobs. They've reduced significant amounts of GHG emissions, and they've increased property values and been largely located in disadvantaged communities in the case of the FIT program. And while we're making investments to the tune of over $1 billion in transitioning Scattergood, which has not been achieved at anywhere on this scale, we want to make sure that we're first expanding proven programs rather than piloting them, which has been the traditional route. And before any future investments are made at other generating stations, we want to make sure to first invest in ramping up these programs to the level that NREL and LADWP have shown are required to support our grid and reach our 2035 goals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Alex Jassett.
Hi, my name is Alex Jassett with Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles, and I'd like to speak on item 7 and general public comment, please.
You have 2 minutes. Please begin.
So first, I just want to take a brief moment to appreciate the council members of this committee, and particularly Chair Yaroslavsky, for your leadership in requiring DWP to continue to explore alternatives to hydrogen combustion at Scattergood and to find the best path forward for the city's energy grid. As has been raised in the past, there are serious concerns regarding the climate, air quality, health, safety, and ratepayer impacts with burning hydrogen in the LA basin, and we remain concerned about the potential impacts of prematurely moving ahead with a massive hydrogen build-out and fear that this commitment of resources will prevent us from achieving a truly sustainable and just energy system in the city. We believe that DWP should update its strategic long-term resource plan to look at alternatives to burning hydrogen at all 4 of its power plants and to conduct meaningful engagement in communities living near gas plants and the potential to talk about the potential risks associated with burning and storing hydrogen. And to be clear, these should not be used as PR opportunities for DWP, but rather as opportunities to hear concerns and potential alternatives from the most impacted communities. The SLTRP should be updated to consider the life cycle costs and risks associated with using hydrogen, and especially the potential impacts on environmental justice communities, which LADWP has not yet considered in its plan. This is especially important considering the disproportionate and cumulative health impacts that these communities face. We cannot achieve environmental justice by perpetuating the environmental injustices of the past. CBE and Sierra Club have authored formal comments that have been sent to this committee in response to DWP's 2022 SLTRP, and we urge this council to direct LADWP to adopt those recommendations and to continue exploring all of the available clean energy alternatives instead of and before pursuing hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Carson Schubert, followed by Leah Gambino and Lisa Hart.
I'll be speaking on agenda items 3 and 5.
You have 2 minutes. Please begin.
I'm the co-lead of the Citizens Climate Lobby Downtown Chapter. We're a nationwide organization focused on rapid and equitable decarbonization. So I'm here on behalf of my entire chapter and really on behalf of Citizens Climate Lobby nationwide, who is pushing for these things. First, I want to say we do appreciate the actions of this council. LA is a nationwide leader, and I think we all know that the actions that we take here can be propagated across the country. Regarding agenda item 3, I want to say that I strongly support this. I can say that anecdotally, access to charging is one of the key problems facing EV adoption in this city, particularly for people who cannot charge at their dwelling, and that mostly affects multifamily dwellings. But this motion also addresses the issue of EV adoption for those of lower income, which is also critical to meeting the local and state goals that have been set. Regarding agenda item 5, I also strongly support this. As the motion says, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, making available over $400 billion for climate-focused projects. But we know that studies have shown that only about 20% of the promised emissions reductions in the Inflation Reduction Act can be achieved if we do not accurately and appropriately use those funds. And so this motion is a great step in the right direction, because reducing the upfront capital requirements for decarbonization is critical. And this has been repeated time and time again, including by the UN itself. We're all aware of the incredible subsidies that the fossil fuel industry has received for decades in this country, and it's time that we apply the same level of financial focus to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Leah Gambino.
Hello, my name is Leah Gambino, and I'm here to represent Chargy, PCS Energy, and disadvantaged communities within Los Angeles. I would like to speak on item number 3 and general comment, please.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Please begin. Hey, Bob.
Awesome. So Chargy and PCS Energy has installed over 15,000 chargers in California, a significant number of these within disadvantaged communities. So first and foremost, thank you, Councilwoman Yaroslavsky, for bringing this motion to the table. It's greatly appreciated. I personally have worked with many DACs and can honestly say that EVs affect these families more than we truly know. When I began speaking with owners and operators of these communities, I was often told these won't bring any benefit to us because the tenants cannot afford to purchase and we cannot afford to pay for the infrastructure associated to support the stations. This creates systemic inequalities that contribute to environmental degradation and health disparities. I'm here to emphasize there's a shift coming quickly. The inventory of EVs in the used car market has increased significantly, allowing for those within these communities to purchase or lease vehicles at a significantly lowered price. Pairing this with available infrastructure rebates will allow communities to reap the benefits of driving an EV to their fullest extent. Benefits like creating jobs, supporting the transition to a more sustainable transportation system, and economic growth. Build it and they shall come is a phrase that I often use. I see the data that supports this. Within almost every DAC we've installed at, there have been a constant increase in the number of drivers. Residents are already thinking of purchasing EVs. They're simply waiting for the infrastructure there to eliminate this range anxiety we hear so much about. In conclusion, I truly believe that by investing in EV charging for MUDDACs, we can help level the playing field by providing families with the opportunity to choose an EV over the gas and money guzzlers we see around us. This is an essential step in reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, improving air quality, and mitigating the negative health impacts associated with pollution. These benefits are just the tip of the iceberg. By ensuring that everyone has access to the infrastructure needed to support EV ownership, we can work towards a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous society for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Lisa Hart, followed by Daryl Gale and Subi Subkota.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hart. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, speaking on my own behalf today. I have a rant and a rave. My rant is
Which
that
item?
I was
I'm
actually
sorry.
here for an item
Could you
that's...
specify which item you're speaking on?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just getting to that. I was here to speak on item 5, which has been continued, so I'll try to get to that. So this is general comment, since we don't have item 5, if I understand correctly.
Okay, you have 2 minutes total, 1 for item and 1 for general comment.
Oh, I can do that. Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. So first, the rant. I would love to be doing this from the comfort of my living room with my cat, checking on emails. I don't know, and nobody I've talked to knows why we can't do that. And I reached out to Council President Krikorian's office last weekend, just heard back from them today after reaching out repeatedly. So maybe there's a good reason, and it's just that nobody in my circle knows what the reason is, but the only thing that I can think of is that it's been a rough few years of public comment, and it has been rough. It's rough as a listener, so I get it, but I don't think that's a reason for limiting public participation, and maybe that's not why you're doing it, but that's the only thing that we see and that we're aware of, and I frankly, and I think many of us had hoped for better from this new city council. So I didn't know I could speak on item 5, but that's great that I can. So I'll just say briefly, we're really, really, really excited about this. It's as though I'm speaking about our Energy Committee. We haven't taken a position on this, but it's as though you read our minds, or at least read our notes, because this is exactly the stuff we've been talking about. We're really excited about the time of use piece, about incentivizing people to do this, and we're very intrigued by the green bank thing. I think that's very similar to the public bank idea, but I love to work with you on this and engage community and get people connected to these services, as Polly also mentioned. So really excited about this and looking forward to working with you on this. And one last thing, I think it's Prop 218. We're a little worried that that's going to limit our ability to incentivize things the way we would like to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Daryl Gale.
Good afternoon. I want to talk about number 7 in general public comment.
You have 2 minutes total.
Okay, this hydrogen DWP project, thank you, is potentially way more expensive and complicated than the SoCalGas lobbyists have told you. LA residents know nothing about it, and we haven't had community engagement town hall meetings, so we can understand the how and why of using hydrogen as an energy source. But most scary about this, SoCalGas has a history of not monitoring, upgrading, or maintaining their equipment and pipelines. Think Aliso Canyon, Marina del Rey. We're dealing here with earthquakes, wildfires and droughts, blowouts and methane leaks. You must slow down this project and have community input meetings before proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Subi Sabkota.
Hi, my name is Shubi. I'm a resident of CD5. I'm a current master's student at USC, and I'm just here for a general comment.
You have 1 minute. Please begin.
Okay. I'm really just here to ask about the amount of trash cans around the city. I know back in 2015, Garcetti had said that he would increase the number by 2019. When I was doing some research in 2017, I saw celebrations about reaching the halfway point of the milestone, but then I didn't really see anything after that. And the goal was 5,000 trash cans across LA, which still feels insignificant for 4 million people. So I'm just here to ask the council. I feel like the trash, the rats in the streets, like all of that feels environmentally related. So I'm just here to ask the council if that's something that y'all can reconsider, just trying to get more city-operated bins around LA. Yeah, thank you.
That's everybody. Thank you very much. So I see no more speakers in the queue. We're going to now close public comment. We're ready to vote on the consent items. So I move approval without objection. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll and tally the votes?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember McOsker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rahman. Yes. Councilmember Blumenfield. Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5 ayes, and the items are approved, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. Turning now to items 6 and 7. Without objection, I'd like to take these two items together. CLA, please read the items.
Certainly.
There he is.
Item number 6 is a Board of Water and Power Commissioners resolution relative to commercial energy storage to grid pilot program guidelines, corresponding standard offer for commercial energy storage to grid pilot interconnection agreement, and the pilot standard offer agreement distribution voltage energy storage supply service agreement. Item number 7 is the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power report relative to a report card on the strategic long-term resource plan that achieves 100% carbon-free energy by 2035 and related matters.
Thank you. Before we get started on this discussion, I'd like to make clear how enthusiastic I am about the city's ongoing commitment to the goal of 100% carbon-free energy by 2035, an initiative which is now known as LA 100. While it was a goal set by former Mayor Garcetti, it's one that I know Mayor Bass is also eager to see realized. Establishing these bold targets meets the daunting realities of climate change and gives us the opportunity to equitably distribute the benefits of this clean energy transition. I know that this committee and the entire City Council wants to reaffirm this goal. And the process we use to get to this goal and how we authentically and fully engage stakeholders are incredibly important. In fact, they're just as important as the in-depth modeling, engineering, and technology advancements needed to materially meet the goal. LA 100 is unequivocally the city's response to the climate crisis, one that will also clean the air for communities suffering from air pollution. It'll create new jobs and advance equitable strategies. I'm also clear-eyed, though, about the cost, but I know that our energy infrastructure would have needed substantial investment regardless of whether we were transitioning our systems to meet climate goals. To give us the update on DWP's progress towards meeting this goal, we have Mr. Jason Rondeau here to address items, no, he's not here for item 7. Oh, okay, great. Jason's here for 7, and Mr. Arash Saidi on item 6. And additional folks, if you could introduce yourselves as well, that'd be great. Welcome, gentlemen. Please proceed with your presentation.
Good afternoon, committee. My mic working?
A little louder, I think.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Jay Lim. I'm the Manager of Resource Planning at LADWP. I'm joined with my colleagues, Dennis Obiang, Manager of Transmission Planning, and Arash Saidi, Manager of Distributed Energy Programs. We're here before you today to give an update on our 2022 Power Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan and next steps as part of the effort. So before we get started on the status, we want to take a step back and give an overview of what the Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan is. So the department has been a leader in its Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan when it initiated in the year 2000. And with that effort, we've had extensive public outreach, and we're a leader in the stakeholder process. We formalized our IRP process, or Integrated Resource Plan, which was later renamed the SLTRP process, in the year 2010, and every 2 years we have a major update. The 2022 is the latest. I want to also take a step back. In 2017, we paused our SLTRP process and moved forward with the LA 100 study. This was a multi-year effort in partnership with the National Renewable Lab, and this had extensive outreach with approximately 50 advisory group members and leading to the 2022 SLTRP, where we continued that stakeholder outreach. So what the SLTRP is, it's ultimately a roadmap that guides our financial priorities to meet our future energy needs. Normally, it's backed up with to support a rate action to help the department fulfill its resource needs. As part of our SLTRP process, we are currently, in October of last year, we went to the board to present the recommended case, which is case 1, that achieves 80% renewable by 2030 and ultimately 100% carbon-free by 2035. And every year, we reiterate our SLTRP process with major stakeholder engagement every other year. The next one will be in 2024. But as part of that, as you can see in the highlighted box on the left, we have a lot of work to do because the 2022 SLTRP predates the Russia-Ukraine war, which put pressure on natural gas prices. It also came before the Inflation Reduction Act and implementation feasibility. All of these efforts we need to thoroughly vet through. So we're in the process of vetting that out, and that will significantly impact our data and assumptions set that feeds into the next process. One of those key things that I just mentioned is the Inflation Reduction Act. There are a number of provisions that would affect power system costs, not only on the utility side, but also on customer side, where customers can participate in a lot of these the federal dollar amounts. The two that I really want to point out is the clean energy tax credits. There are a number of incentive tax credits and production tax credits that could potentially put downward pressure on clean energy costs, such as solar, wind, and energy storage. Along with that, clean vehicles, there are federal tax rebates that will provide consumers federal money to electrify their transportation to participate in EVs. And this would essentially increase our load growth over the long term and put downward pressure on rates. We also want to highlight the recent February Council File 23-0039. So the department is currently scoping out the alternatives for scattergood generating station and what that means in terms of how that will affect the LA 100 equity strategies and the next SLTRP. We do plan to go to the board in the near future to approve a contract to support these efforts. But we are concerned with a lot of what the stakeholders have brought up to us, and so we're actively working on that. So next I'll hand it off to Dennis Obiang to give a briefing on LA 100 equity strategies.
Good morning. Good morning. Mike? Good morning. Perfect. My name is Dennis Obiang. I'm here to give you a manager transmission planning. I'm here to give you an update about what is DWP effort in equity strategy and to consider as part of the DWP transition from fossil fuel to clean energy resources. So you are aware that in two years ago, we started a study with National Renewable Energy Lab to understand are there any pathway to get to 100% clean energy future. The study revealed that there are pathways to get to 2035 clean energy future. However, if we couple this transition with electrification of EV charging, it could significantly reduce greenhouse emission in the city of Los Angeles. So as part of that effort, we recognize that there are a lot of benefit and impact to all Angelenos that were not investigated as part of the study. And then we decided that to launch a second study, which is energy equity strategy, to understand what are the impact associated with the benefit with transitioning from fossil fuel to clean energy resources. So we did LA equity strategy, which is intended to increase energy outcome for all Angelenos. And we did it by forming a lot of communities, working with various communities, and also trying to understand through collecting their feedback, through engagement, a robust engagement program. We also list some pathway of possible energy outcome that we can work and develop. Those include, for example, how do we increase local access to solar, energy efficiency program, electrification? How do we increase access to EV charger for all Angelenos? How do we ensure that we have clean air for most likely for residents that live close to DWP gas plant? How do we also promote good paying job as a result of that transition? These are the type of discussion, the energy outcome that we try to derive from energy equity. All of the benefit and the recommendation from the energy equity study will be fed into the SLTRP. Be advised that the energy equity started 2 years ago in parallel with the same study. Although the SLTRP is complete, we are almost there to finish our study. We have not had the opportunity to implement all the funding for energy equity, but what we have recognized that there are low-hanging fruit that SLTRP can start implementing with the understanding that next year we're going to implement all of the recommendations from energy equity study. So one of the key things that I want to note here is that this study is the first in its nation. It's taking into consideration best-in-class research, taking into consideration innovative social science approach to understand all the benefit of energy transition. Collectively, those methodologies are centered around holistic approach for consolidating all of this effort, but mostly around 3 energy tenets. Let me walk you through those 3 energy tenets. Sorry. The first one is called recognition justice. This one seeks to understand what are the inequities, energy inequities that the existing citizens of Los Angeles have been affected in the past and also currently. How do we reverse that? First, understand the problem. The second tenet is what we call distribution justice. How do we ensure that the program we develop are distributed in a manner that is just and equitable for all residents of Los Angeles? And the last part, which is procedural justice, is enabling it to make sure that the citizens of Los Angeles have a self-determination to be part of the solution in helping DDP co-designing all those equity. So that means that we will need participation for a resident as we go through that transition to clean energy future. I want to spend time to give you an idea a little bit who are the community steering committee members that we've engaged with. We have about at least 10 of them. Most all of them are community-based organizations. They are basically a steering committee that we formed to give technical guidance how we will develop those energy equity outcomes. And then we also have advisory committee. We also recognize that the effort that DDP is doing today has multiple benefits for all the agency and city department. How do we work together to have cross-sectional and analyze those cross-sectional benefits? You have some of them. We have 9 city departments. I'm not going to go through all of them. We have labor union. We have neighboring council. They've been actively involved with us as well as part of this discussion. Before I go on, I just want to say that DDP has done over 115 listening sessions with the community, over 15 steering committee with a discussion with the steering committee, and over 6 advisory committee meetings. We have done a robust engagement program that ensures that all our residents are involved in this discussion. If we do it properly and successfully, DDP will be one of the leading utility in the nation to ensure that we have a just and equitable energy transition. Now I'm going to pass it on to Arash to continue on the discussion.
Good afternoon, Council Chair and fellow council members. So here we have a representation of various vehicles that are in the market. So you have electric sedans, hybrids, gas, and of course gas pickup trucks. The past SLTRPs had what we would say a myopic approach. It looked at basically the average retail sales in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour, cents per kilowatt hour. We're going to evolve that in future iterations of the strategic long-term resource plan. And how do we do that? We're going to be ramping up programs. You're going to see one that's going to come to your observation in just a moment. But one thing to keep in mind is we're seeing that electric sedans are going to be adopted more prevalently. And as we ramp that up, we're going to look at the energy intensity a customer encounters versus just looking at the electricity used for consuming in the home. And that's top to bottom. So that's one thing that we're going to be scaling up as we expand the SLTRP efforts. And of course, this, as Dennis alluded to just moments ago, is that it has to be done in an equitable manner. So we'll get into how that plays out. So moving on, we're tracking our local solar status. This is a very important slide. Our board gets this on a monthly basis, and basically what it tells them is where we stood a few years back in terms of our local solar needs, whether it's net metered, feed-in tariff, or our own utility-built solar assets. But beyond that, what we're doing is going to track that with SB 100, as well as our SLTRP Case 1 target. And we're going to see where we stack as this time progresses. And if we need to make corrections along the way, that's available to us as we move forward and work with our community-based organizations to ramp these programs. So this slide is one of my favorite slides because it's an opportunity for me to gloat in a way in that we have an abundance of programs out there that serve a multitude of needs, right? But one thing we have to be clear here is that no one program solves all the needs for LA local solar needs. So you'll see that net metered has been a very successful program that derived back in 1999 and has continued on to deliver about 560 megawatts of capacity, helped by the Senate Bill 1, which helped bring incentives into the developing of those solar projects. Feed-in tariff, another shining symbol of solar, has about 102 megawatts of installed capacity, and that comes from all sorts of CEC renewable eligible projects. And recently we obtained board approval to expand that program by additional 75 megawatts, as well as to make carport and canopy incentives available so that we could see more development of those types of projects throughout Los Angeles, especially in disadvantaged communities where we're going to actually increase that incentive, as well as making EV charger installations required as part of that installation. And then you have, before you've got shared solar, which is focused on our renters, and then solar rooftops, which is focused on folks that own homes but don't always have access to the ability to put solar on their home. So we come out there and install it and lease their rooftop effectively. And then the last one there is the Commercial Energy Storage to Grid Pilot Program. And this is a new program that we're intending to seek approval from this very council, with the intention of expanding and creating a marketplace for energy storage, both on the vehicle side as well as stationary energy storage systems. Now, one thing as we move on in this process is that we need to listen to our stakeholders, and that's a multitude that Dennis just alluded to. But beyond that, we're going to start off with an effort to walk through the way we're going to implement these programs to either ramp up the ones that are working, to maybe scale back the ones that are not, and then create new ones that address all the needs of all our stakeholders. So we'll be taking this over the summer and extending that throughout the year to effectively get that feedback and make sure that local solar, demand response, transportation electrification, as well as energy efficiency are being considered in how we reach our customers in the most effective manner. So before we move on, I wanted to kind of set the tone for item number 6, which covers our commercial energy storage to grid pilot. There was a need that has been addressed by Governor Newsom on multiple occasions, where he issued proclamations for states of emergency both in 2021 and 2022. And part of the reason we have this is because there's been a shift in the way energy has been used, as well as the resources available to do so. So there was a request by the governor to make any and all assets available in order to address the statewide energy concerns. So that's one of the drivers for where we decided to kind of land on the development of this program. Now, if we go more locally, you've got the LA Executive Directive 25, which has requested that all city buildings adopt emissions-free solutions, from buildings to their fleets to the way they dispose of trash, you name it, top to bottom. Beyond that, you have local entities like LA Metro, LAUSD, last mile delivery vehicles, UPS, FedEx, who all have adopted various forms of emissions-free and carbon-free targets as far as their boards are concerned. Luckily, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which now brings an opportunity for these types of projects to proliferate. And then the CEC has numerous funding opportunities that have been introduced and are going to be introduced in the coming months. And of course, the state budget we're all very closely watching that one to see how much funding will be allocated for electric vehicles and energy storage. But one thing I really want to note, and I should have put that at the bottom, is the EPA ruling. I'm sure you've all heard by now, this week was a major announcement in this realm, where the EPA is now requesting that all auto manufacturers adopt carbon emission, tailpipe emission standards, pretty aggressive ones, about 66% for passenger vehicles, 50% for buses, and I believe 25% for medium-duty and heavy-duty vehicles. So that's going to change the entire dynamic for the automakers, but we need to catch up and make sure that we're there to meet on that demand. When customers say we would like to install an EV charger, we're able to say absolutely, or we have charging pavilions out there to accommodate your needs. So SLTRP, it's specifically to this point, I wanted to showcase 2035, and in those 3 instances we have the high, highest, and moderate cases, which show the demand for energy storage going forward. And so that's another impetus for us to create a program like this, because pilots take a while. We don't have immediate results coming in. We need at least a few years to really understand what can happen. And so that's where this program kind of falls into place. So an overview of this is that we're looking at all storage technologies, one of which is stationary, which is a battery sitting on a concrete pad, and then the other form of that is a vehicle, which would be able to store that energy, and then when it comes back into a bus yard or fleet yard, be able to plug that vehicle back in and discharge whatever remaining capacity is available. Now, the overview of our program stands with a 20 megawatt allotment, a offer a rate agreement, which effectively says that we want to see that energy delivered during our critical peak hours in order to be able to then dispatch that resource through our control center. And then on top of that, we want to encourage the participation in this program, so we're making the interconnection process, or at least the financial aspects of it, a lot easier for the developers. And of course, this will be separately metered systems, no impact to their existing load, and 10-year agreements, or maximum 10-year agreements. So this is how we've structured the compensation factor. So first and foremost is the interconnection. That's the upfront incentive that would be issued after the system is effectively turned on. We would cover up to 75% of that with a not to exceed of 150 for 4.8, which is one of our distribution level circuits, and then $400,000 for the 34.5 circuits. In addition to that, we want to make sure there is a certainty as these developers take on this both financial, but also just inherent risk of it, any sort of project, is that they have the ability to recoup those investments. And part of that is a guaranteed minimum annual event. So we intend to call at least 50 events. There may be more, but ultimately that's what a developer and a customer who's participating in this program can expect to receive as part of the arrangement. And lastly, the export rate. This is a pretty generous rate. It's 17 cents above the peak charging rate for all discharged energy. And there's a reason for that, right? In order to learn from this, given the prematureness of this compared to the other utilities, we need to pay for that knowledge. And that's where we're trying to create effectively a marketplace that brings these folks into LA to be able to develop these assets on existing property. Now, from a budgetary standpoint, most programs that may come before this council are usually ones that cost the city, and in this case, potentially cost ratepayers. However, this one is quite the opposite. So with our program, we're estimating about $32 million, six of that which would be in the form of interconnection costs, and that's on a high end. And then the credits that we would issue for participants is about $26 million. Now, as a result of this, we're asking people to do something they weren't doing yesterday. And that creates effectively new energy sales. And we've basically estimated that number to be around $45 million. So when we subtract that 45 from the 32, we estimate that we can actually generate $13 million of net revenue from introduction of this program. So I've kind of alluded to these benefits, but one of the major ones that stands out is the ability for our control center to not only have visibility of what's out there in the system, but be able to do some peak shaving, remove some of the most expensive energy on the grid, but also to be able to leverage this underutilized energy capacity. If that battery or that, let's say, vehicle comes back into the yard, it may or may not charge, but if there's an extra energy storage and we need it during a key hour of the day, we'll be able to discharge that battery for of course, keeping our grid reliably available to our customers. And then the other benefit is the CO2 emissions reduction. So if we do a full rollout of this program, that's 5,000 metric tons of reduction compared to a typical internal combustion engine of a similar vehicle. And of course, the improved local air quality. And the beauty of this program is a lot of these yards and a lot of these locations where would be ideal locations would happen to actually fall within disadvantaged communities. So inherently, this is the benefit of this, is that you'll see effectively better air quality as a result of early adopters of this type of technology. And with that, I open it up to questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. I have a couple of questions, then I'll open it up to my colleagues. So when you presented to the predecessor of this committee in September of last year, the committee asked you all to collaborate with advocacy and environmental justice partners on improvements to the report card. Can you describe how you've done so and what changes you've made to the report card based on that work?
So there is a report card that has been filed on council, and I believe that just gives you a summary. I think it's a one-page summary that details effectively what is the status of various aspects of the department, one of which is our electric vehicle programs, our renewable portfolio standards, our local solar, and also potentially some challenges. I want to be clear, is that the report card that's being referenced, or is there something different?
Yeah. So the LA 100 biannual report, more broadly.
I think we'll need to get back to you on that one. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Item 7.
Okay.
Right, this was a presentation on
If
6
it's the
and
report
7.
card I'm referring to, the one page that kind of walks through all the various aspects, then if you could just ask the question one more time to make sure I answer it correctly.
Yeah, so last year when there was a presentation to what is now the E&E committee, last September, the committee, apparently, because none of us were here, asked DWP to collaborate with advocacy and EJ organizations and partners on improvements to the report card going forward. So just broadly speaking, what does engagement look like to inform how you're doing your work?
Yeah. Okay, actually, if we go back in a slide, that engagement activity has happened in twofold. One of which is what Dennis alluded to, which is already happening, is to understand equitably how do we actually address some of these concerns that we've brought up. But the other aspect of that is we need to understand the programs that we have today, are they capable of equitably serving our customers? And so this workshop is effectively planning to be started this summer with the timing release of the equity strategy study. So I think first and foremost, that study needs to be out there in the public and needs to be up for discussion so that we can understand the various key metrics that we're going to use to effectively address the concerns that our CBOs are going to bring up, or rather the advisory group. So we'll individually go through each of these topics. So local solar is one of those topics, electric transportation, energy efficiency, and then of course a wrap-up of that. And the intention is to, as we go along the way, is to get that feedback and then digitize that in a manner so we can say, these are the things we heard from you, and this is what we would like to do going forward. Are we on mark, or do we need to make some course corrections along the way? And that's really where this implementation workshop is the culmination of what SLTRP did, which is to analyze and research and understand where do we need to be in a few years from now, but also how do we do it in a reliable and cost-effective manner. And then where the equity strategy comes into play is how do we do that equitably? How do we make sure that all customers are uplifted and brought to the table? So I think that's the effective strategy we have going forward, and it'll carry on throughout the course of the year, where we can invite all forms of stakeholders, both residential customers, commercial customers, and of course the CBOs.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. That's a great question. This is precisely why we started the energy equity study. We wanted to understand what are the equity outcomes that we can get out the energy transition. To do that, DWP could not do it alone. We have to engage with various community. You saw earlier the steering committee, which is made of 10 community-based organizations. They serve as a technical advisory to how we can co-design those various equity outcomes. And then we also look into various agencies, including environmental agency, including city department, to see how they can benefit from it. What we intend to do is that step one, we do the study, understand what are the equity outcomes. For example, how do we increase solar, local access? How do we make the rate affordable? How do we ensure that there's access to EV charging? How do we ensure that there's green job created as a result of this? That's what we heard from the community. So we took it back. Now, for their team, what they're going to do, how do they implement those equity outcomes to come with those report cards? So what we're going to be doing, we're going to give them a test, some kind of a screening mechanism, a bunch of questionnaire that we would develop with the community that say, when you roll out a particular program, you must go through this screening to ensure that the program is deemed just and equitable for all the citizens of Los Angeles. Only then that program can go forward. I think that's the kind of feedback we want to go back as a report card to our community and say that last year we developed those equity. These are the programs that are coming out of it. These are the metrics we use, and this is the finding of it. And then we can either adjust or reiterate, like Arash mentioned. Is not a one solution fit all. It's truly an iterative process. As we are going through this for the first time, we have the first leading utility to do this. We want to do it in a manner that is transparent and open, and also have some sense of accountability from our residents. So that's in general what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions. Can you please explain how the motion I brought that established guardrails on green hydrogen in the Scattergood generating station, which asked for an updated pathways analysis to incorporate non-combustion alternatives, higher levels of transmission, long-duration energy storage, more demand response, non-combustion technologies, and other consideration, will be incorporated into the final SLTRP? And in particular, how will the updated modeling inform the SLTRP?
I could take that. So as the department was going through the LA 100 study, the National Renewable Lab, and this was a 3-year study, they evaluated no combustion options. And of those no combustion options, it was found that it put more upward pressure on more transmission, and where the event with that we have extreme conditions such as wildfires, those scenarios and sensitivities were not reliable. And as we move forward with the 2022 SLTRP, we built on the LA 100 study, which driven by the City Council motion to achieve 100% carbon-free by 2035. And so that was the blueprint that we used moving forward to update our SLTRP. And so a lot of the assumptions and methodology, the modeling were very similar. So as we heard stakeholder feedback through the 2022 SLTRP process, we're looking forward to move ahead and consider more those no in-basin combustion comments. So we're actively working and reading comments from stakeholders as part of the process. And as to be responsive to the recent council motion in February, we are looking to issue a contract to gain support to evaluate Scattergood options.
Jay, you just started to answer what I came up to answer, so I might have cut you off. My apologies. Just very quickly to round out that thought, Jason Rondu, Director of Planning with the Department of Water and Power. There was the motion that directed us to look at air quality impacts, locational air quality impacts, alternatives to green hydrogen, including long multi-day demand response. As Jay just began to tell you, the scope of that contract that we want to do to bring on a third party, such as NREL, very likely NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, will take care of the lion's share of those questions that were being asked. They will do a process of looking at those alternatives. We'll have additional data, more updated data, updated beyond what was done as part of the LA 100 study. That study has now been done for 2 years, and a lot of the input and the data and the research that was utilized in that is several years old. We'll be able to update that. All of the work that's done as part of that will get incorporated into future SLTRPs, and we will be able to look at additional potential cases, different pathways to achieve our renewable goals. So that is in process right now. That has not been awarded. That will have to go to the LADWP board for consideration. I don't know that, depending on the cost of that, it may need to come to this committee and eventual council, but we don't know that for sure yet. That will depend on the cost, the total cost of that contract.
What do you expect the timing to be on when you'll have a sense of the cost and can come back to finalize the contract and get to work?
We have an internal estimate of that cost, and I would have to confirm with supply chain whether or not it would be appropriate for me to publicly discuss that internal cost estimate because it may influence our negotiation on that.
Not cost, but timing. How long before
timing.
we have an updated NREL analysis of alternatives and other pathways?
I will have to get back to you on that because for the different areas that the motion asks us to look into, some of them are very straightforward and will be very easily done. Others take a very significant amount of modeling. One example of that is when you look at the locational air quality impacts, that takes a very significant amount of modeling because you essentially have to rebuild your entire power plan model and understand where units are being dispatched and understand other air quality information outside of the power system. And so that's an example of one that will take a substantial effort and more time. Other areas, such as looking at alternatives, such as the state of the technology of, for example, multi-day demand response, I would imagine is going to be a lot quicker. But we won't have a precise answer to your question until we finalize the negotiations on that third-party contract, which again, Jay, if you've got the approximate date of when we expect to bring that to board, that would be great if you do have it. If you don't have it, we will report that back to you soon.
Great. Thank you. It seems to me that a major weakness in our efforts to get to 100% clean energy by 2035 is the significant assumption that the green hydrogen infrastructure will be sufficiently built out to provide the needed supply. I'm curious what DWP has done to assess this risk that supplies won't materialize in time, and what are the contingency plans in case we've built this plant and the hydrogen just simply isn't there?
So one of the key outcomes of LA 100 study and across all scenarios was that firm dispatchable capacity in terms of generating units on demand that could burn a renewably derived fuel was required in all scenarios. And so, so moving forward, we are building into our SLTRP methodology to evaluate emerging technologies. To date, we do not know of any technology that is as compact as a generating unit where you have say a peaker unit within a small footprint that could be located at a power plant that can ramp up within 10 minutes. Energy storage is not the same type of device, but we are actively monitoring emerging technologies, and we will continue to do so. So for SLTRP, it is important for us to reiterate year after year. And so as Jason mentioned in the upcoming contract, we will learn from the new the third-party study and be able to factor that into next SLTRP.
I don't think that answered my question, but I think the concern is that you're moving ahead with an environmental process around scattergood, but there's a whole separate process that needs to happen to figure out how the hydrogen's going to get to scattergood. Yeah. And it would be great to know what that's looking like in terms of process timing to ensure that a state-of-the-art facility doesn't get built and there's no throughput.
The hydrogen fuel source is an opportunity that we're actively evaluating. Unfortunately, it's handled by another group, but we can report back to you. We've submitted some applications to the Department of Energy to take advantage of potential DOE funding to move forward with that, what they call a green hydrogen hub, hydrogen produced with renewables. And we're also moving forward with the Intermountain Power Project, which is the first of its kind that will be that will be utilizing green hydrogen made from renewables. So we're looking to extract lessons learned from the Intermountain Power Project. But we'll have to report back to you on the sort of a response on the hydrogen hub because it is outside of my groups.
Sure. I think as we have conversations about scattergood, it would be helpful to also have parallel conversations at the same time about the infrastructure to bring the hydrogen there and making sure that it's truly green and that it's safe and that it'll be online when scattergood is ready to open, assuming we go that route. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop there, open it up to colleagues for questions, if anyone has any questions. Councilman Blumenfield.
Thank you. I'm excited about this, and always said, you know, the holy grail for renewable energy is storage. And while we wait for some of the new technology to come to really make that happen, the commercial storage is an incredible opportunity. So I'm excited about that. I have a motion that I'm going to actually drop next week on this to try to help promote this as well. I did have a question though for the ratepayer advocate. I see Mr. Pickle is here. I'm wondering if you could join us for a moment. And it's to elaborate a little bit on your position with respect to the city participating in this program. From where I sit, it appears the program will be key to ensuring the heavy-duty fleets are electrified and used for battery storage. You know, the commuter buses, we have large fleets. If we do it right, it could be a win-win for DWP and for the city, and that's what we've been saying. But I know you have some concerns, and I wanted to understand them and bring that forward.
First, I'm Fred Pickle. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Public Accountability Ratepayer Advocate for the City of LA. And our role is to evaluate things that impact LADWP's rates. This counts. We think this storage program is a very positive development and it should go ahead, but it needs to be understood as a pilot program. I've been through the commoditization of storage in 2 other commodities, and every business struggles with these changes because storage is complicated. And especially selling storage where it was previously integrated with utilities in many ways, selling storage to third parties or distributors storage complicates things a lot. It's important to have pilot programs so you can understand how they work, how attractive they are for the customers, whether it's too expensive for the ratepayers, whether you've built something that does inappropriate incentives, that is, it quashes competitive activities in your EV charging development or in electric vehicles. So it's important to move that forward. This program proposes a maximum project size of 3 megawatts, correct?
That is.
For scale, that's 40 Model 3 all-wheel drive Teslas. So it's a good-sized parking lot full of Model 3 Teslas. So it's a first step. It's a way of understanding this. Specifically, we put some exclusions in to maximize the availability to get different players in the program. One of the exclusions is we suggested, since the city is still working on its update to its EV master plan, that the city be excluded at this time. When the city is ready to go ahead, it's probably most appropriate, since there are conflicts of interest between the city and DWP as an entity, since they're a single legal entity, to do this in the form of a public MOU.
You're saying there are conflicts in form of, wouldn't
In
the
terms
MOU
of,
make it clear?
Because of Props 218 and 26, rates have to be based on cost of service. And while we can get by that for a pilot program, because we're trying to determine the cost of service, we think it's appropriate to do that in this initial stage. And also, part of the reason I mentioned the scale of this is this at 3 megawatts per project. This is a parking lot of Teslas. I believe there are more chargers in City Hall East than the 40 that are implied in that limit. Am I correct? Does somebody know? I believe City Hall East has more than 40 chargers.
Yeah, well, we almost have that many here, just in City Hall on the 3rd floor. I mean, but they're not the full-size chargers. So it's interesting. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the Prop 218 issues and how that can play. But at the same time, you know, the city is such a great opportunity to do this. We have the big, heavy-duty fleets.
And that would not well be served with a pilot that's 3 megawatts per project. So I think a separate MOU for the city, and it's likely this project might move ahead more quickly, and we might gain some experience with this. And the essence of this program right now to encourage participation is the standard offer provides a discount on energy prices in return for cooperative operation. And the question is, how big does that discount need to be and what's appropriate there? And that's part of the cost of service analysis.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Yeah.
So I think the pilot program you described is really interesting. And so if I'm understanding it correctly, basically the primary benefit of this is demand management, right? Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if this pilot expands, or if this pilot proves to be successful and we can expand it across the city, does that impact some of the considerations that went into the need for scattergrid, for example?
This pilot will be one of the many tools in the shed that we will be using to address future ramping of other power plants, whether it be scattergrid or others. Ultimately, is we need energy storage, as indicated in the table or the chart I had earlier. But this is a revolutionary decision we've made here, right? There is no other utility in the country that is doing this. There is no other utility that's publishing export rates. They've talked about it. They're testing it, but we've gone a step further to say, let's create the marketplace. Let's bring in the players who can actually bring the tools and necessary equipment to effectively test this case and be able to control those assets.
Yeah.
But this is, again, a pilot, as Dr. Prickle alluded to.
Right. Okay. Well, I think, continuing to make sure that we're monitoring the success of the pilot and looking at its expansion in a kind of proactive way, I think will be really interesting. The other question I had was, are these, the way that you're talking about it, is it also something that could help with some of the issues that we've been facing in terms of areas facing power outages during major storm events and things like that? So for example, is this the kind of resource that you could put in an area that's subject to frequent power outages like hillside neighborhoods in my district that could provide resilience during those moments because of the stored energy in these batteries or cars or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's 2 points to that. These systems operate independently, so they won't necessarily serve that customer's load, but the intention is to be able to dispatch these resources so we don't ever have to get to that point where we have to cut customers off. The intention is to keep those circuits running where possible.
Right.
Eventually, when we look 5-10 years ahead, when we have enough of these assets, we'll be able to now look at the possibilities of isolating circuits to keep customers on, especially those that have critical services for the city, whether it's an LAPD, an LAFD facility, and also these assets that'll be on the same circuit. So ultimately, that is the future outlook of how we would manage these assets.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would necessarily be able to address the specific challenges that we've been facing in recent months, but maybe over the long term, it could be something that for, maybe for something like a heat-related power outage, it might be something that could serve us, but not necessarily during a power outage caused by trees falling on power lines, because how would you be able to plan for that kind of?
Right. Yeah, you still need to be able to route power. There's 2 things going for us. One is that we do already have an existing pilot called Feed-in Tariff Plus, and that's where we co-locate solar and storage. And in that instance, customers can actually be able to use that solar or energy storage to feed their local facility. So we can keep those customers online with that program. Secondly, we're going a step further. We're actually building these types of projects throughout the city. with the first one being in South LA at Green Meadows, where we have solar plus storage and EV chargers, and that's actually a cooling center. So in the event we have a heat wave, and we have 100+ degree temps, folks in the community, if they don't have power, will be able to walk across the street and enter the gymnasium of this facility and be able to stay cool while they can ride through the heat wave, and we can restore power.
But is this the kind of infrastructure that can only be done in concentrated areas? Like, for example, does it have to be institutional players that are bringing in, or like a big parking lot where we're parking a lot of cars or buses or something like that? Or is it something that can be integrated to an individual household's storage capacity or an individual car storage capacity at a home?
For the scope of this pilot, our focus was fleets, right? Or commercial property owners that have available footprint for an energy storage system. The future of this program, will, from all that knowledge and integrating that asset, we'll be able to evolve that to residential level. And that's in the form of demand response and managed charging. We'll be able to send, hopefully in the future, price signals that say this is the optimum time to charge, and this is the optimum time not to charge, or maybe discharge this battery because we need it. And that's the future evolution of our demand response program. You'll see more of that as we become better in optimizing our energy efficiency.
And how many years before we can start thinking about how we design those programs?
Good question. So back to that implementation workshop, that'll be part of the discussions. I want to get feedback from our customers. And if our stakeholders say, this is what we want to see and we want to see it by this date, that puts even more pressure on us to become very good at what we do and work endless hours to get to that point of coming up with a program that essentially solves that. So to boil it down is that we're working on that with an RFP that will hopefully be able to bring in these resources in the very near future. So our focus is...
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you right there. When you say very near future, what's the time
Good,
frame?
yeah, good question. My target is Q3 of next year, is to have something out on the street that will be able to be viewed by potential participants who can help bring those solutions to LA. It is happening in various utilities. It's happening at pilot level. We would like it to be a rolled out effort that's done in a collective manner.
May I add
Sorry,
a comment?
I just want to, really quickly, because it follows along with what Arash was mentioning. Arash and his team are working on an RFP, as he mentioned, to expand our demand response portfolio. Right now, we have, 30,000 customers in a smart thermostat program, 38,000 customers that have recently been ramped up over the last few years. This summer, that will continue and expand. Next summer, the goal is to expand that beyond smart thermostats to include other devices like storage, like electric vehicles, and so on.
And so can people proactively ask to be in this pilot, or is it limited to particular geographic areas?
We would like to have that be a full-blown program, in part because, again, that will remain to be seen because our board and this council committee would have to consider that. But knowing what we know today, we think that that is a little bit more mature from a technology standpoint than something like discharging back into the grid, which is what this program is, that's up for consideration today, is proposing to do. But to be able to access batteries and to be able to do managed charging, that technology is a little bit more mature. The one challenge that we'll have to make sure is that we have the actual visibility to utilize that, because that's when it becomes actually a really valuable resource for us, where instead of dispatching, on high heat days, you start to utilize your power plants that are not very efficient. Having these resources, I think many of us know that, will allow us to use those resources, those fossil fuel resources, even less during those high heat days.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, to me, it just feels like looking at this, there's a potential blueprint for climate resiliency for our hard-hit neighborhoods that face a lot of power outages and things like that underneath this pilot program, but it will take some learning in order for us to figure out how to think about implementing it. Okay, thank you.
Before these programs can be adopted broadly, they have to be really set in international manufacturing standards before the Teslas and the Chevy Volts and all that, or the major appliances can do that. It really will take international standards, because it's not worth any consumer's time to monitor this. It has to be done automatically, and the equipment has to be operating automatically, like the smart thermostats. They really needed to be handled by standardization. The concepts behind this were initially proposed in 1979, and the article was called Power Systems 2000. Well, we're not there yet. So you're asking timing? It could be a while.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
Councilmember McCosker.
Sure, thank you. I'm wondering if there's an application for the pilot program in the harbor area, and I might be off a little bit here, but you know, one of the frustrations in and around the harbor is that we have you know, a program to plug in ships, and in these events where the governor has asked us to reduce for high heat event or whatever, we've unplugged ships, and it creates environmental harm to the community. And as we're looking forward to the electrification, without losing jobs, the electrification of equipment in and around the harbor, is there an application for large-scale storage in and around those facilities that would put us in a position where at these important events, when we have high stress on the system, that we can continue to plug in ships? Or am I mixing up two things?
Let me try to understand this question that you have. It's a great question, actually. So our focus within the development of this program was to address needs that were brought up on many fronts, one of which was Governor Newsom's energy proclamations.
Yeah.
More locally, we have the Executive Directive 25, and also just the shift in policies that are occurring at all sort of companies to address climate change, right? Especially when it comes to fleets. So our focus was, let's do this in a manner where energy storage, we treat it agnostically. We don't really care what type of technology, whether it's sitting on 4 wheels or it's sitting on a concrete pad. To us, it's electrons in a battery. We need them, and we need them during key hours. So that was really the impetus for the program. And so we said, let's keep it broad. Let's see what the market tells us. Let's do that price discovery and understanding technology. Now, when we transition ahead, we fully understand that ships eventually will transition. There will be massive batteries on the ships, and hopefully to a point where oil is not necessary to operate these ships. That is the evolution, but that technology is still nascent, right? It's not there to a point where we can say we have these type of ships that are available and are ready to be plugged in and fully run on batteries. Now, there is battery components to them. So I think when we look forward, absolutely, we want to bring the ports and the ships that dock up the ability to power them where possible. When it comes to the 18-wheelers, that's something we can do pretty much on day one of this program. We want to work with the various operators of those fleets to make sure the infrastructure is in place at the port, so when they go and deliver to various locations through the city of LA and outside, that those chargers are capable of that bi-directional activity. Because so their routes may be only 20, 30 miles. They may not deplete that battery, which is an amazing opportunity to be able to discharge that battery when that truck rolls back into the harbor and be able to send that back to the grid when we need it, especially in an area like the harbor, which would mean that we would necessarily use less of a resource that's available in that region.
So does it make sense to look to market particularly a terminal as a demonstration as part of this program?
We'd be glad to work with terminals. If there's ones that you suggest, we'd be glad to reach out to them.
Great, thank you.
Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And please forgive me if this is not appropriate, let me know, okay? But, you know, talking about this pilot, talking about the expansion of fleet vehicles that are very much tied to electric, you know, vehicles and that whole process, like I think about the conversation that we had around the catalytic converter piece. And if there are conversations being had with like vehicle manufacturers around this piece, is there any way that we can also incorporate the ask of them to also install anti-catalytic converter theft in the production of these vehicles so that we're not having to catch up? Especially considering that a lot of the EV vehicles are some of the highest targeted vehicles because of the amount of precious metals within the catalytic converters. And so if we are establishing a pilot, just something that I think it's important that we ask, and If that's okay if I could ask that? Thank you.
You can certainly ask it.
Thank you.
So you ask a phenomenal question because catalytic converter theft is an ongoing issue. I'm sure we all have our Ring apps and Nextdoor apps, and we see those people lifting the car on blocks and taking them out in under 2 minutes. So that is absolutely a problem. The beauty of electric vehicles, however, it doesn't have a catalytic converter. So we just
Good.
have a battery that effectively has motors, and that connectivity allows for these systems to operate. So there's no tailpipe, there's nothing to control and scrub and effectively, eliminate from the pollution side of things. So from that perspective, we're in good shape.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So the answer is EVs for everyone.
Yes, EVs for everybody.
Forget cages.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation. Seeing no other questions, thank you. Really appreciate it. Let's vote on item 6, which is the DWP resolution approving the CES pilot program. We'll continue number 7, so to keep the item open for our next LA 100 report later this year. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Yaroslavsky,
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker,
Yes.
Councilmember Rahman,
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield, Councilmember Blumenfield,
We're voting.
What's that? Oh, yes, aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
5 ayes, and item 6 is approved.
Excellent, thank you very much. Turning on to item 8, CLA, please read the item.
Item number 8, City Administrative Officer reports and transmittals relative to the Measure W Safe Clean Water Program, authorizing the Board of Public Works to execute regional program transfer agreements, addenda, and related necessary actions for Round 3 projects dated March 2023, and the proposed project support letter policy dated April 7, 2023, and the Measure W Safe Clean Water Program Administrative Oversight Report dated April 6, relative to the proposed LA fiscal year 2022-23 Watershed Investment Strategic Plan and related matters. And we have staff available for questions.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'm thrilled to have this Safe Clean Water Program item before us. It's especially timely given our season of heavy rainfall that turns stormwater management into a topic of conversation in people's kitchens, which doesn't happen very often. Given that the businesses of this item is a little bit complicated, I want to clarify what exactly it is we're going to be covering in this item. We have 2 reports to consider approving. The first is the CAO report authorizing the Board of Public Works to execute Round 3 transfer agreements, addenda, and necessary actions to implement the Measure W projects dated March 20th, 2023. These are the contracts entering into to transfer the money for the projects. The second is the Measure W transmittal report authorizing the Bureau of Sanitation to publish and implement the 2022-2023 Watershed Investment Strategic Plan as dated April 6, 2023. I'll note that while the agenda lists the proposed project support letter policy dated April 7th, 2023 as part of item 8, there was an administrative error and the support letter policy is now in a separate council file so people can access it. We can't technically take action on that, but we'll still hear about it from sanitation in their presentation. But we'll refrain, if it's okay, from having any policy discussion on the proposed project support letter policy. I'll stop you if we start to ask questions about that. So let's turn now to the Bureau of Sanitation, Mr. Scaduto. Welcome. Please proceed with your presentation. And given the complexity of the program, I'd appreciate a brief presentation so we have plenty of time for discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Michael Scaduto with LA Sanitation and Environment. Very excited about stormwater, especially since we got 30-plus inches this year, so this is very timely. I hope you received the handouts we provided to you. First meeting back in session, we weren't quite sure how we wanted to handle that, but the stormwater arena is growing and very excited about that. For those that aren't aware, in 2018, LA County voters, and I'd like to think that on behalf of the city's contribution to that, voted to approve Measure W, also known as the Safe Clean Water Program. The county is implementing that program, and we are now in the 4th year. And so each year, well, let me retract a little bit. Upon approval of that Measure W, LA City Council via the working group and our Administrative Oversight Committee, established the administrative codes that identified LA Sanitation as the primary fund administrator of that program. With that came some responsibilities. We are routinely work with our working group and our Administrative Oversight Committees to manage the program so that we're in constant coordination with our city departments and the Department of Water and Power. To date, as you mentioned, we have presented our fiscal year 22-23 Watershed Investment Strategic Plan, and that provides an overview of how the program is shaping up, the successes that we've had in the program as a city, in addition to some recommendations on how to improve the program on areas that we can control. The Watershed Investment Strategic Plan looks not only at the municipal program, and that's where we receive approximately $35 million per year in returns from the program, and we have a little bit more discretion about how those funds are administered. Right now, they are funding 15 capital improvement projects throughout the city, primarily focused on delivering water quality improvements so that we can help demonstrate compliance towards the water quality regulations and under our MS4 permit. On the other side of the program is the regional program, which, depending on which watershed we are in, does provide some additional revenue. Collectively, between the 3 watersheds that the city participates in, we anticipate $45.5 million in return if we look at what our contribution is to that regional program. I'm proud to say that when you look at Prop O, which was a major success for the city and provided $500 million, we are in the 4th year of the regional program, and we've already generated in revenues returns for projects in $330 million. So we are on pace to do some good things here. What the WISP does provide is some recommendations in terms of how to improve on the program. But let me retract back and tie to the transfer agreement on round 3. Round 3, the city was successful on securing 2 projects, two project applications. One of them was for the Angeles Mesa project, which is secured $8.4 million, as well as the O&M application. The O&M application was for the Echo Park operation and maintenance, and it was going to bring $2.4 million into the program for constant O&M of that lake. Propo was a large project that Echo Park was a large project that Propo funded. So collectively for round 3, we are looking to enter transfer agreements for $10.8 million. With regards to the project support letter, what we found, and I'd like to call your attention to slide 10, is that the program is so dynamic that it does allow for outside community-based organizations and some NGOs to provide project applications. Those project applications are direct, do impact the city of LA as they are within the public right-of-way. And so the project support letter, when we'll hear about it on another date, is intended to provide some additional guidance to the program. Sanitation, as the fund administrator, does want to be aware of the projects that are coming in. And so as a result, they do have some impacts on the city. There are some long-term O&M possible commitments that those projects that are being delivered by community-based organizations may have. And so it's intended to provide an overview of everything that's going on within the city to ensure that there's no implications to other parts of the city and the O&M that's associated with those projects. So I'll pause for any questions.
Great. So, thank you. Really appreciate all the work you're doing to address stormwater and the complexity of spearheading this program and implementation. I have a couple of questions, just 2. Given that these sorts of projects can be complicated and involve multiple departments, can you explain how coordination amongst departments works for project selection, project design, and other aspects, and how, if we're interested in bringing a project forward, we can do that?
Absolutely. We have a Safe Clean Water Working Group where we work with our city departments such as Street Services and Department of Water and Power. Those have been the 2 primary departments that have been interested in securing both regional and Safe Clean Water funds. The vetting process to determine which projects are moved forward. The WISP, the Watershed Investment Strategic Plan, does provide an outline of future projects for consideration into the regional program. On the municipal side of things, there are much limited funds available for that, and so through working with the working group and through our Administrative Oversight Committee, If there are projects that other departments want to bring forward for consideration, we try and hash them out there. In terms of future projects and selections, one of the unique things about the regional program is that the county does hire what we refer to as watershed coordinators. Watershed coordinators are supposed to be the pulse of the community and trying to hear back from them. In addition to working with the respective council offices to determine the needs of the needs that are throughout the community, one of the things that we primarily look at in terms of project selection is water quality and compliance. We as a city have some TMDL deadlines coming up in 2026 and 2024 that require the city to show compliance in improving water quality. This is a mandate that's under our stormwater MS4 permit. So the projects that we've identified for future efforts is the baseline for where we start. It is difficult to implement water quality projects throughout the city. Hillside areas are very difficult to work in, whereas the Upper LA River, being that it's over a confined aquifer, does provide a unique opportunity for groundwater infiltration. And so the WISP identifies future projects, but we're welcome to ideas of thinking outside the box, hearing from the community. And the goal is to leverage outside resources, funding, and other community input to determine which projects will move forward.
Great. One more question. So generally, can you talk a little bit about our approach to funding the O&M, the operations and maintenance of the new stormwater management projects, and how you mentioned Echo Park Lake? I remember those conversations when we were negotiating Measure W. How are you thinking about allocating these funds, specifically the local return for O&M? And is most of it going towards O&M on existing projects, or are you now using more of that local return for new cap improvement projects with the idea of eventually shifting it? What's the approach?
So the municipal program is unique in that the city has a little bit more discretion about how the funds can be used. But there is a criteria that projects built before Measure W, prior to 2018, only 30% of our budget can be returned for that, can be utilized for previous stormwater projects. So this puts us a little bit in a dilemma. Prop O was a good investment, but it did not provide for long-term O&M. It only provided for the capital cost. The municipal program right now is pretty healthy, being that the program is still in its infancy stage, and so we feel confident that we could fund the O&M primarily from our municipal program. I think it's important to note that because the city as a leader has put more stormwater projects in the ground than any other agency, in the next few years, I think we're going to have some decisions to make about whether we continue with our stormwater investment in terms of capital improvement projects, or we really focus on the long-term O&M of the projects. The regional program is very unique, though, because it provides an opportunity for us to submit applications on the regional side. And I think the City of LA has demonstrated, again, leadership, because we've submitted 2 applications for large regional projects that we've built throughout the city, one of them being Echo Park, and the other one being Machado Lake, that we just secured funding for in round 4. And so we're very proud that we've been able to demonstrate that under Prop O, we've built regional projects, and we're in a position to fund them.
And the idea is to every year go back and allocate those funds for ongoing maintenance of those projects.
So we've learned that through the regional program, we can submit applications for a 5-year period.
Right.
And so, for instance, Echo and Machado are both applications that provide funding over the next 5 years.
Great. I just have one more question. One of the things that I'm most excited about with Measure W is the opportunity to build projects on school sites. Has there been any progress working with LAUSD to co-locate some of these facilities on school sites?
I could say confidently that sanitation has identified the priority schools that we'd like to work at. It has been a challenge, though. One of the challenges with the applications that we see from LAUSD moving forward at the regional side is that we have to be cognizant that LAUSD does not pay into the program. They're not part of it. So when project applicants for LAUSD do go forward, that is a big consideration. We feel confident that if we've identified our part in the schools that are a priority, if we can overcome the challenge of having LAUSD and have them really partner with us to bring water onto their site, this would be a win-win for the program. It'd be a win-win for the city because it allows us to utilize land that's already available for stormwater capture, And we typically like to find those large portions of fields and parking lots that, those are prime real estate for our type of projects. But it has been a challenge. The watershed coordinators are taking a little bit more of a leadership role, but we could definitely use some additional support.
Yeah, I would say you should think of us as all resources in our own communities, and so to the extent we can be helpful with the school board, please let us know. Colleagues, any questions? Councilman Costover.
Just following on that, in round 4 in the 1-5, we got the big one, Machado, which is fantastic, and a little one in Wilmington, a project that is important, but it was, you know, in the couple millions. And in each case, I will say I felt like we were on the sidelines a little bit, and we were trying to like bust in to sort of advocate for a project that was really good for our own district. And I know that wasn't intentional. I would just echo what the chairperson just said. Call us in early. It might be that I'm coming in sideways, and I've only been here for a couple of months, but I would love to advocate, especially for more of those smaller projects that really have an effect on neighborhoods, whether it's a school or a local park, or just in the Wilmington project, it's just some permeable sidewalks and some reworks of some of the street surfaces there. Really, really, really important to the community. But I felt like, you know, I feel like this is an opaque process, and it's really hard for even a council representative to break into it. So it might be just me, but if it is you, let's both work on it.
Definitely appreciate the support.
It's not just you.
Not just him.
Yeah.
Really opaque.
I will say that the program is still at the infancy stage, and we're growing into it. One of the unique things about Council District 15 is that it is the only council district that resides in the South Santa Monica Bay.
Yep.
So we focus on you down there, to Council District 15. I do think that the program, now that it has become more cyclical on an annual basis, and we know what to expect. I think the first 2 rounds was really a learning process, but I definitely hear you on that. And I think going into round 4, round 4 was already approved. Finishing up on round 5, actually, we will be calling on the respective council districts to garner some additional support and your input.
And we all have community members who read the Times and sort of understand what this is, and they are pitching ideas to us. So just play us or trade us, you know, get us in the process, okay?
Absolutely.
100% agreed.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Really excited. No more questions? Seeing none, let's move on to our vote. To reiterate, the vote before us is A, we're going to approve the CAO report authorizing the Board of Public Works to execute Round 3 transfer agreements, addenda, and necessary actions to implement the Measure W projects dated March 20th, 2023. B, approve the Measure W transmittal report authorizing the Bureau of Sanitation to publish and implement the 2022-2023 watershed investment strategic plan as dated April 6, 2023. And C, we're going to continue the proposed project support letter policy report dated April 7th, 2023. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rahman.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
Have 5 aye votes, and the items are approved, and 1 was continued.
Wonderful, thank you. That concludes our agenda. Mr. Clerk, are there any other items before us today?
The desk is clear, Madam Chair.
Beautiful. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Chairwoman.